In the previous video, I showed you how 15-year-old Andy Woodward won the Tata Steel Challengers tournament. And let's take another look at the final cross table and the player in second place, Vasyl Ivanchuk. He came so close to winning the tournament, just a half a point behind Woodward. Ivanchuk is 56 years old and still battling hard in every single game. Ivanchuk is mercurial. You know, in some tournaments, he doesn't have the energy, things don't click. But when he's in the right mood, he puts his heart and soul into every game. He's a true artist. He's incredibly creative. And he strains every sinew looking for ideas, which means he's no stranger to time pressure. It shows how much he cares. You might have seen this dramatic moment from round 3 of the Challengers tournament, where Ivanchuk left himself with just 1 second to make move 40. That's the final move of the time control. Can he do it? Well, let's take a look at this clip from the live coverage of the Tata Steel tournament.
And look at the time. Look at Ivanchuk's time. 6, 5, 4,
Yes, to
3,
go, F6.
2. Oh, that scared me.
Hang on a second.
And
How much time? He's got 1 second.
Oh, 1 second to make one move. Is he going to do it, crowd? Is he going to make it? No? I would play Queen takes G6 check here, just to confuse him. yeah. I'd go Queen takes G6. Just play it.
But if he 1 second.
1 second. Is he going to do it? He's looking at the clock. Or just play.
Yeah, he has to play something close to the clock.
I know. Yeah, yes.
He's got to get ready to go bishop takes D5.
Check.
D4, sorry.
He's got to hit the clock with 1 second. This is ridiculous. Is he going to do it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Everyone's watching. They can feel
I don't think he's going to do it.
Come on, Chucky. Because his position now is okay.
But he's also not ready. He needs to be wherever.
Needs to be hovering.
He needs to be there.
1 second. And what does White play? White's got pawn takes pawn. Okay, he's gone for something.
Oh,
did he do it? Oh.
He did it.
Whoa. Just in time. How's to give us all a heart attack? Yeah.
Wow. Excellent commentary there from Jovanka Halska and Simon Williams. In fact, Ivanchuk went on to win that game, incredibly. And yeah, he had a fine tournament, including a victory over the winner, Andy Woodward, in their individual game. And it was somehow a very typical Ivanchuk performance with some extraordinary calculation, but all based on very sound positional principles. So let's take a look at that game. We've got Vasyl Ivanchuk playing white, Andy Woodward black. Ivanchuk playing white, and it's a solid start from both players. The so-called Ragozin system. Bishop g5. And after h6 you can just bring the bishop back to h4, but Ivanchuk just exchanges on f6, and he's very experienced in this line. He's played it in the past with both colours. Takes on c4 and c5. And instead of castling, Ivanchuk just takes this pawn, which feels like quite a dry continuation. But he's played this before. He obviously likes this position, and he just tries to squeeze out, a small advantage here. So, you could say that White has a symbolic advantage because these pawns are split, and White's connected pawns are better from a positional point of view. So that pawn on c6 is perhaps a weakness. It could turn into a weakness. But you have to see that also black has 2 bishops, so they could be important. Also, black's pieces aren't too bad. the queen is actively placed. I mean, black still needs to develop, that's one thing. And white's development is much, much easier, you can see that. Now previously, Ivanchuk has faced knight e5 here, but Woodward plays a rook d8, so apparently a new move, but it doesn't look terrible. Looks quite reasonable to put the rook opposite the queen. Now, I think most of us would simply move that queen away. Queen e2, I can imagine could be played in a heartbeat, or queen c2, both very reasonable moves. But this next move is so typical of Ivanchuk. Every move is a special moment. Every move he's trying to squeeze the most from the position. And after 9 minutes, he played knight e4. So how many of us would risk a move like this at such an early stage when there are very sound alternatives, queen c2 or queen e2? In order to play this, you need to calculate very deeply and very well. And again, that's typical Ivanchuk. Now, one could simply drop the queen back to e7. But then, well, the bishop can't go back to e7 or f8 and would have to come around here, so it's not exactly what black wants. But it's possible. But Woodward decides to take the bait. He accepts the pawn on b2. So this is brave, and this is typical of him, and shows why he won the tournament, because he made those kind of brave decisions. And Ivanchuk, very quickly, he'd obviously planned this very well, just nudges the rook up the board, which pushes the queen to the side. So you can see that queen is a long way from the king side. And again, Ivanchuk had obviously planned this very deeply and very quickly. He played knight to e5. Okay, a crucial follow-up, by the way. And now it's becoming clearer that white has very good compensation, because while the queen is stuck in Siberia, then white is massing very nicely and could potentially attack black's king with the queen coming up to one of these squares. But in the meantime, there is an immediate threat to take on c6. It's actually quite hard to defend that. You would like to play bishop b7, but then white can simply take the knight. So queen a4 played to defend that pawn. And then bishop b3. Nice subtle touch, pushing the queen again. And of course that opens up the c-file for the rook. And knight takes c6. So Ivanchuk has recovered the pawn and he threatens the rook. So what happens if, for example, rook f8, just moving the rook away? Well, after this move, then white really starts to dominate. You can see that white's pieces are absolutely fantastic. And that's extremely unpleasant for black. So at this point, Woodward decided to play bishop b7. And here is where it continues to be very tactical. And you have to look at this so deeply in order to get it right. So Ivanchuk, after 18 minutes thought, plunged in. And, well, of course, if just rook takes knight, then white is the exchange up. So bishop takes knight on e4. So the rook is attacked. The knight is attacked. So what are you going to do next with white? I think it's time for a think and drink moment. I'm going to have a drink. You have a think. White to play. What did Ivanchuk do next? Do you want to improve your chess? Get access to live masterclasses with yours truly? Then subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess, and for just $25 a month, you get a newsletter with a test game, calculation puzzles, a monthly opening survey, access to an archive with over 100 opening surveys. And you can join in live masterclasses exclusive to patrons where you can ask me questions directly over Zoom. All for only $25 per month. Do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess and join the club. Well done if you spotted knight takes f7. That's the best move in the position, the move that Ivanchuk played. Knight e6 is also possible, but knight f7, well, as we're going to see, is very powerful indeed. So first things first, you always have to look at the captures when you're calculating. So white would have to consider king takes knight as well as bishop takes rook. Okay, so first of all, what happens after king takes knight? Then rook c7 hits the knight, and if it's defended, then bishop a4, and there's a nice skewer, so you win that back, and white is the exchange up. Okay, let's go back. So what about bishop takes rook? Well, this was the game continuation. So what do you do about that one? Well, Ivanchuk recaptured with the bishop. And here is the point. If king takes knight, then queen f3 check, forks king and rook. You would have had to have seen this well in advance. So instead of that, knight f6 was played. So at the moment, if we just take a look at the material count, white is one pawn up. But that knight is slightly stranded, you know, it's not so simple. I mean, it might be worth having a think, you know, what would you play here? I mean, I was looking at this, and bishop g6 is kind of a safe move. It's not possible to dislodge the bishop, and it holds the knight. You know, that's possible. But again, typical Ivanchuk, he's striving not just for a decent move, he's looking for the absolute best move. And he invested 9 minutes here and played knight d8, and it is really powerful. So to some extent it shuts out that rook. Obviously the queen defends the knight. But it's looking at that sensitive spot on e6. So if the knight could take the pawn, then it could come back very easily. So e5. Now what's that knight doing way up the other end of the board? Well, in fact it's absolutely fine. Because of this. And queen b3 check. And it emerges on c6. So here it's pretty securely protected. Attacks the bishop, which was defended. And now an important moment again. I mean, it's not exactly stranded because of course it could exchange here at any moment. But that would kind of be a cop-out because that bishop isn't a very good piece. And that knight could be a wonderful piece still. And Ivanchuk played queen b1 check. That was blocked with e4 and then rook c1. So that really secures the knight on this wonderful square, actually. Brings the rook into the game, attacks the queen. Okay, the queen was nudged again. And now h3. So just a bit of consolidation. Gives the king an escape square, but also takes control over the g4 square. So white is safe here. And you can see that knight, well, it's a bit of an octopus knight because it's controlling some important squares on the 8th rank. So that rook finds it difficult to get into the game. Now there's actually a threat to take here as well. So the bishop came back to d6. and queen b7. So you can see that Ivanchuk is really dominating here. So the rook's attacked, it moved to f8 and bishop b3. Really nice that all white's pieces are coordinating so well. Most of them are protected, not the queen of course, but the other pieces are well protected. And it's depressing to play against your opponent when basically there's nothing loose here. Everything is covered. There's no easy hits. Queen f5. I suppose you could say that's probably the weakest square on the board, f2. But, well, yeah, there's a problem here. Of course, the queen is attacked. It needs to keep hold of the bishop, but it can't keep hold of the bishop. That's why queen f5 was played, and rook takes d6. So, again, Ivanchuk had to just calculate this carefully. Because after knight g4, of course, you don't want to take, because there'd be a check here. And, yeah, the king would be, well, it's a perpetual. I don't know if black has any more, but of course, yeah, we don't want to allow perpetual. Yeah, it just looks like a perpetual to me. Not that one. But Ivanchuk realised he could just play rook d2 to stop the queen coming in. And knight takes f2 played. Remember, white is a piece up here and actually can consolidate very easily with queen d7. If knight h3 check, then the king comes to h2 and everything's secured. So queen f6, king h2, very tidy move. That knight controls e5, so there's no check there. And now it's very, very easy to win. And that was the final move of the game. White is a piece up, but more than that, black is about to be checkmated. Let me just show you one line. So, let me see. What about... yeah, here's the shortest one. King here, check, here, and mate. That'll do. Yeah, actually I think it's quite fitting that Ivanchuk broke through to the king at the end, because actually, you know, this whole attack was really about exploiting the weakness of black's king with the rook and the queen far away. And by the time it got to this position, you can see the king is still in trouble actually, because without the f7 pawn, then all these light squares are very weak. So that was how Vasyl Ivanchuk defeated the eventual tournament winner, Andy Woodward. Chucky came very, very close to winning the tournament, but yeah, just behind. Anyway, fantastic to see Ivanchuk back on form.